Good evening. My name is Brandon Nicely, and I'm currently a student at California Baptist University in public administration. And right now, we're going to be going over justice and ethical duties of public administrators and how that pertains to upholding justice and equity through ethical leadership. So, an overview of what we'll be discussing today, we're going to be summarizing justice and fairness according to a number of literary pieces, primarily in the writings of three authors that are relevant to this topic: John Rawls, Samuel Gregg, and John Stuart Mill. We're going to do a slight compare and contrast of their writings to kind of gain a better understanding of what they were trying to say when it comes to justice and fairness. And then after that, we're going to go and discuss practical insights and application within public administration of these ideas of justice and fairness. Then we'll discuss the implementation of our Christian worldview within public administration. And then we'll go over our final thoughts and additional questions or what this all kind of means. And then we'll do a very, very brief summary of the references. So when it comes to justice and fairness, there really is no universally agreed upon definition as to what these things mean. However, after examining the literature and going over other readings and studying the theoretical perspectives, we can kind of gain a very general knowledge of what justice and fairness usually means to a lot of people. Justice is, in a nutshell, each individual should receive what they rightfully deserve and in the most appropriate manner. Whereas with fairness, it's about each individual being treated equally without fear of being subjugated to any kind of prejudice or discrimination. So, a very quick summary of the competing theories, at least the ones that I think are relevant. First is going to be John Rawls. He emphasized liberty and equality and that the greatest benefit should go to the least advantaged member of society. And the thing with these theorists is that we see elements of more like procedural and substantive elements. And these two sides can be applied to a lot of other theorists as well. Procedural is more of the process of how something is achieved, and substantive is more about the outcome, more or less, of what transpired and how that is applied to individuals and society. So, John Rawls, we can kind of see elements of both procedural and substantive when you get more into his writings. However, when you go into Samuel Gregg, especially with his idea of general justice, he promoted the common good and fulfilling what was owed to others through the fairness of the interactions themselves. We can kind of see more of a procedural element with that, especially when he mentions the interactions. Now, in terms of his particular justice, he promoted the proportional distribution of common goods. Well, that's a little bit more substantive now because you're giving out things equally and people are receiving them in an equal and fair manner. John Stuart Mill, which that's him to the right, he stated that the consequences are ultimately what matters, and an action is justified only if it contributes to happiness. So again, that's very substantive, right? It's more of a the ends justify the means kind of view. Of course, he had other writings and he expressed other opinions as well. So again, that's just a summary. But when you look at these three writers, you can see elements of procedural and substantive in most of them. And within public administration today, within the practical application of it, a lot of these questions come into play is, hey, do we focus on, for example, like equity and fairness in opportunity, or do we focus more on equity and fairness in result? And that's when the debate comes in. So, regarding practical insights and the application within public administration, we have to look at different sources of morality and values. And there are two main ideas that I think are relevant to public administration when it comes to its actual execution. For example, the first idea is cultural relativism. A person's values should be understood through their culture, which they identify or belong. Basically, you have to look at somebody's culture in which they grew up or how they understand the world, determine what they're doing is necessarily right or wrong. Whereas subjectivism is a little bit more individualized. It's more about a person's specific values and how those are dictated by their own personal experience. So cultural relativism has that influence of one's culture, whereas subjectivism is a little bit more independent of that, and that's about their own personal perception of the world and how they view things. Now, within public administration, realistically speaking, depending on where the area that you live, but in most areas, especially in our country, United States, we are expected to serve a very diverse number of people from many different backgrounds, cultures, nationalities, countries, or just geographic areas. It's very, very rare that you have a certain area that is exclusive to only one kind of population or culture or religion, even. So I do think it is beneficial to have a better understanding of both cultural relativism and subjectivism, because even though people are members of cultures, they're members of certain faiths or religions or nationalities, every person is still an individual person too, and no person on this earth is exactly identical to the next, no matter how similar they may appear or act or believe. And ignoring these differences within individuals can be dangerous when it comes to effectiveness and efficiency within public administration. Now, the implementation of Christian worldview within public administration is something that should be considered, because when it comes to the Word of God and the Bible and faith, that can apply to any situation. You just have to know where to look. So these are two verses from the Bible that I do particularly enjoy that I think are relevant. First one is obviously from Micah, which it highlights the importance of acting justly and walking humbly with God. However, what's important about this one is the fact that it's not only the individual's responsibility, but it's also a societal one to act justly and be humble. Isaiah is equally relevant because it commands to actively seek this justice to to defend those who may be oppressed or who may be disadvantaged. It's not enough that we desire justice. We actually have to make steps to strive for it, to try to achieve it. And final thoughts, the thing with public administration is that it's not a hard science, unlike math and chemistry, physics, where 1 plus 1 always equals 2, whereas in public administration, 1 plus 1 doesn't always equal 2. It could be a number of different things. And so there can be a multitude of different interpretations or solutions to a given problem. So ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, what is truly the right thing to do in a situation? How can we help the most people appropriately and effectively, of course? And though we may consider the word of God to be an absolute, some other people may not think that way. And that's something that we do have to take into consideration as well. So acknowledging realities, but still striving to be just and be fair is very possible. You just have to have the right mindset about it and be open to other things as well. And these are my references. I took work from John Stuart Mill, Greg, obviously, and also, of course, the Holy Bible. Thank you.